digitalization and future technology impact both the way we work, but also the way we interact. And in this context, the question of open data is ever so important to be addressed. After all, information is what we tend to manage most of the time as public administration, and that is most of the time what public administration are required to deliver. So very important to take maybe a moment to reflect on the importance and validity of data, and in this context, the open data in an environment like ours, where our institutions, our organization are called upon to deliver their services in an ever more transparent way for the citizens, but also for the well-functioning of our organization. We have several questions that came to mind when preparing this panel discussion on the basis of the panelists' contributions, and one of those was certainly, what are the approaches that we have today in our public administration when treating open data and digitization? We will see through the panelists' contribution the question of net neutrality coming into the discourse, and how this also impacts the way information is organized, both inside the organization but also outside. The role of ICT seems to be critical in how to manage and handle these processes. We have also the impact of technologies, both as opportunities but also as challenges for public administration. So without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to Professor Fuertes, who will sort of take us through the concept of net neutrality, look at open data, also in the context of the democratic system and health care. Professor, the floor is yours.
We have our gaze fixed on the horizon, the future, a gaze overwhelmed by novelty. Nevertheless, we should not forget the long road of legal conquest we have traveled. And this is what I'm going to try to piece together. Highlights of a couple of points of the development of the internet. The network and surfing the net are fraught with risks and what I call highwaymen. For this reason, a major function of public power today is the guarantee of security in the relationship if we want to keep a society open and free. This concern made me remember the situation of the land of Europe when it was noticed at the end of the first millennium that the sky had not fallen, as so many soothsayers has predicted. It's true, there are myths and legends. It has to be reconquered to the virtual highways for the network, communication and service of the internet. It is above all important for me to educate citizens in the correct use of the internet. If in the year 1000 their collaboration and the peace way and the king's love were insisted on, today our action must be directed towards recognition of and the defense of democratic and social order. The recognition of public's rights and freedoms. This recognition is the basic of the star of the flag of the European Union. And the next step is to guarantee citizen equality and the equality of opportunities. In this regard, there are at least risks that could speed or fracture democratic social order, with something law must face. On the one hand, there is a need to ensure every citizen's right to access internet. It is well known. Some years ago, European legislation established that access as a universal service. But day-to-day reality, there is a vast gap between European cities and rural areas. Will you believe me when I say that in Spain, in other countries too, there are many homes without broadband access, and even without internet access, please believe me, because it's the truth. That's why we must increase in a solid connection throughout Europe, an extensive connection to benefit all European citizens, regardless where they live. A network sewing together all the parts of Europe to avoid the split seams of the Eurosceptics and any others wanting to break up Europe. And now, another question is complicating the recognition of citizen equality. Net neutrality. We have two basic tests. Regulation 2120, passed a year ago, to establish common rules in order to guarantee the rights of end users. We know companies can and must manage traffic, is their mission. But that management must be fair and it must not affect citizens' basic rights, by which I mean public rights and liberties so important for maintaining an open and free democratic society, such as freedom of expression, the right to information, the right to communication, and so on. Here again, we call to mind the traditional legal institutions that have given so much to the law of European countries. First, French law, with the establishment of public service. The Internet, rather than a public service, is a means of proper of many public services. For this reason, public authorities must establish minimal service obligations for companies, at least to guarantee the equality of opportunities for all citizens. We have available to us then legal techniques and fine-tuning to establish these minimal obligations, together with legal principles to make such management neutral and objective, especially regarding principle of proportionality, reasonableness, non-discrimination, and transparency. But in my opinion, it would also be appropriate to remember the words of the jurists of the Salamanca School in Spain in the 16th century, especially Fernando Vázquez de Menchaca, who argued so well about common property, and inspired Hugo Grotius' word about the freedom of the sea. Net neutrality is very similar to that freedom of the sea, and like that freedom, it may see limitations as numerous risks exist. Because just as the states bordering the sea and the great companies that consolidate and arbitrate their traffic obtain had much to say about their freedom, so some states seek to block and control internet traffic. And the great companies and the great telecommunications companies especially are seeking to influence access to certain contents and services. These are the new and powerful feudal lords who wish to make the rules and channel the traffic. That's why we must insist that the freedom to surf the internet should be intrinsically linked to the guarantee of the recognition that citizens must be able to rely on equal opportunities throughout the network. They are therefore beginning to appear instruments and criteria for assuring equality of opportunities for European citizens. But to go forward in this direction, it is absolutely necessary to do away with fragmenting telecommunications markets, to encourage investment in telecommunication, and to be firm in ensuring an open development of the internet and net neutrality. The freedom and equality of citizens and companies is at stake. One only needs to reread Rousseau's discourse of the origin on basis of equality among men to see this. And now, a few words on a third point, one arising from the vast amount of information available. One praiseworthy aim is the provision of the body of information by the public institution to improve citizen knowledge, and A, their participation in challenging public policy, in monitoring administration, and in demanding accountability. One of the risks I foresee is that the processing of so much information, of that new paradigm formulated with the name big data, that incurs automation in the choice of guidelines for public policy, and short course in decision making might lead to a single path for citizens to channel their wants and demands, and in all those harshly brave new world. Life have to be open. Techniques for enhanced public participation in administrative procedures are also relevant, a subject that Professor Galetta will talk about so well. That is all I have to say. It must be recognized that thanks to innovation, much has been achieved. But we must keep fighting to raise the flag of freedom and equality over the vast sea of the Internet, to keep it open and neutral. Thank you.
Very, very while listening, I've noted down two main issues here for me that are important. A, the notion of citizens vs users, which is certainly a contradiction that for IT people it's sometimes hard to find. And then, of course, the need, which is, I believe, what the professor is calling for, to regulate all of this process and have the individual and its well-being at the center of whatever IT and the tools are trying to enable for the fostering and the developing of a sound society. So thank you very much again, Professor, for this high-level contribution. Would now like to give the floor to Professor Galetta from the University of Milan. She's also, as I said before, a professor of administrative law. She will now bring in to the reflection the role of ICT in the public sector. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me to. Maybe my presentation will be less inspiring because I will be talking about the role of ICT in the public sector. I need the first thank you. So I would like to try to explain what we are supposed to do when we talk about digitalizing public administration. So I mean the concrete work of a public administration, like your administration as well, not only the national one. So theoretically, in the transition, we have two possible approaches. We can digitize on a peer administration basis, by which I mean we digitize the single administration, so the single office or the single administration, but on a single basis, or we digitize a procedure, an administrative procedure. The first approach is the simpler one, as a matter of fact, because in this case you just have to support with technology the activity of a single authority, administrative authority. So the process in this case should be carried out by digitizing all the activities concerning a specific authority without taking into consideration the possible interactions among different authorities. And this is a problem we will see later on. So, next one. The second approach is much more complicated, but because it involves the idea that you should have a cross-cutting approach, by which I mean that you have to digitalize the entire process conducted from the first act to the issuance of the final administrative act. So the question is, what do you mean when you talk about administrative procedure? Because this is obviously, it's evident for me, perhaps not for you. The point is, we were talking this morning about direct democracy. We should involve citizens, we should be near to the citizens again. And so the basic idea is that here you have to keep in mind that you have to deliver something. So the work of a public administration, it doesn't matter if it is a national administration or an EU administration, you have to deliver something. So you have to control anti-dumping, or you have to give aids to an enterprise, to a single person, a funding, something like that. But the point is, you have an activity going on from the first act till the final act, and you have to deliver something. And what is important from the point of view of the citizens is what you are delivering, not what is going on in the whole process. But from the perspective of a public administration, it is this which is the most important thing, because you cannot possibly produce the final outcome in just one step. You need different steps, and in each step, maybe you have to involve different public administration. In most cases, normal procedures are not simple procedures, so you see an involvement of different actors. And what is more complicated in our framework, I mean the European Union, is that you often have actors at different levels. So you have an EU public administration, organs or whatever, and then you have at a certain stage the involvement also of a public administration at the national level, which complicates all the things. So this idea, we will try to explain it a bit better. It is that you have to, if you really want to digitalize, you have to digitalize all these. So the whole process from the first act to the final act. So I don't want to deliver solutions here. I just want to raise problems, points. So the process is obviously that it is simpler, because you have to do the whole work in a closed environment, the single public administration you are working with. And it is internal, so you don't have to handle with the problem of connecting different administration, different people who are not used to working together, and so on. The cons, obviously, it's evident, fragmentation, and a coordination is needed, because, and this is the linkage, if you digitalize just a single public administration in a different way, in which you digitalize another public administration, they won't be able to connect to one another and to coordinate, so you won't achieve full digitalization, and you will always have this paper everywhere, like me. I mean, I use computer every day, but there's a point where I need paper, and you have to deliver paper to another public administration. This is not digitization, as a matter of fact. So, the next one. And I need water, which is not... I think we missed the previous one. Okay. This is the... If you digitize an administrative procedure and not per administration basis, the advantages, for sure, you can take care of what is really a problem nowadays concerning the European administration, procedural guarantees. There is big complaint, you know that, about the fact that when EU public administration work, they don't care about procedural guarantees, or they don't care enough about procedural guarantees. The only way to keep it on board, if you digitize all the process, is to have this approach, so a per procedure digitization. And in this case, you can take care also of the problems of legality of action, because you have a single procedure with a legal basis and following certain steps which are described by a piece of law, evidently. And you can achieve full digitization, which can lead to reuse. This is another major point. I don't have the time to talk about that now, but the point is also that you should be able to reuse the documents and all the piece of information you have in other procedures. And to do that, you need to have the whole procedure digitized. Obviously, cons, it is more complex, much more complex, time-consuming, costs money, and it can be done for one procedure at the time, but for sure you can develop standards that you can then export to other administrative procedures. Okay. How to choose and what to choose? It depends, because obviously digitization is just a tool, it is not a goal, it is too often forgotten, but it is not a goal in itself. It is just sort of reshaping the way the administration works, the way they interact with one another, the way in which they perform an administrative task. But it doesn't change, and I want to be clear here, I am an administrative lawyer, so I want to keep the point. It doesn't change the classical concept of administrative law, which is administrative procedure, administrative act, and so on. So this won't change because of ICT. So what to do and why to do that? Another important point. Each time, you know it better than me, each time you create, you digitize something, you have to create, develop, and maintain something, a technological solution, and this costs a lot of money, and it is not just at the very beginning, it is afterwards when you have to maintain, to take into account all the possible criticism, problems, and so on. It costs plenty of money, so when they tell it is a way to spare money, they are telling a lie. It's not like that. It costs a lot of money, and it means also investing in people. You have to have people who know how to work with that and to use it in the best possible way. So we would say as lawyer, it's just a matter of proportionality, cost and benefit. You have to find a way to find the right balance, and it is not a balance you have once. You have each time to find the right balance. Okay. Is technology something who could allow us to have a better service delivery for the citizens? Yes or no? It depends. Again, from the point of view. Let's take here the transparency point of view. We all know that we have plenty of reference in the treaties about an open administration, an administration which should be near to the citizens and so on, participation, Article 1 of the Treaty on the European Union, 10, 11, whatever. Then we have an Article 298 about this problem of open administration and so on. I won't tell you all of these. The point is, you also have in Article 41 of the Charter of the fundamental right of the European Union, the right to a good administration. And what it is, the right to a good administration? So a real right which the citizens, the EU citizens, have been recognized by the Charter. It is about transparency, it is about participation, it is about the idea that you should allow the citizens a broader participation, but where? Not at the political level, but at the public administration level. So where, concretely? In the administrative procedure. That's the place where it should be located, this participation. And yes, in this case, technology can help, because it can help to allow broader participation. It is easier to participate if you are located in another country, in another place, throughout the use of technological tools. And then, it has been mentioned this morning many times, the idea that you have to have a responsible member of staff, even when it is a complicated procedure, different levels, national, EU level. It could be possible to imagine something like that with digital tools. It's not easy, but it could be imagined. And then, obviously, what is everybody's talking about that, access to documents concerning specific procedures should be easier by using technological tools, but it is much more evident. Okay, so all this is wonderful, but we shouldn't forget, as I told at the very beginning, that we very often deal with procedures having different actors at EU, at national level too, and the level of development of IT in the different member states is not the same. We have to say that, it's clear. And so this is the kind of situation we could find ourselves in. So this is a problem. The digital divide is not only the problem of the citizens not having access to internet or to technology, but also the problem of public administration located I don't know where, who cannot use technology or cannot use technology enough. And so please mind the gap, digital divide and so on. Thank you very much.
I would like to invite here with us Mr. Pravat Agarwal, who is acting in the unit of the e-commerce and platform in the European Commission. He's going to talk about digital platforms, data neutrality in government. He's going to introduce some concept of interoperability, the importance also for the operating systems and the digital government. Login time. Important also that you note that digitization is per se not an element of transformation. We, and I personally believe that transformation should be looked at the post-digitization process. That's where change needs to be monitored and analyzed to see if transformation has taken place. And I think that that's the place where the cost benefit of your initial action need to be looked. Whereas today, maybe with our processes, we tend to analyze the costs of the initial action rather than the result, the outcome of it. So thank you very much for that contribution, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good. So I'm Pravat. I had a long struggle about what I'm going to tell you, actually, and the assignment was really challenging. So I remembered being in my final year in school, and my teacher giving me an assignment which I really didn't know how to answer. You know, the assignment was to start with talking about open data, net neutrality, and public and the digitalization of public administration. So I tried to give you a perspective that's slightly different from perhaps what you will normally hear or what you will hear normally from the Commission. And so bear with me as I'm going to tell you, I'm trying to take you on a journey which is a slightly different take on the same things. My name is Pravat, and I work for the Commission in DG Connect, and I'm responsible for the digital platforms and the e-commerce file with a big team of people. So here we go. I'm going to start with data. And of course, the assignment was to talk about open data. And in the directive in 2013, we made an obligation for public administrations to make their documents available in an open format, and this is frequently known as the Open Data Directive, or the PSI Directive, the Public Sector Reuse Directive. And this was an example of a kind of harmonization procedure across Europe to ensure that public administrations make their data available. I think this is personally not a very well-known directive, despite the great work that's going on. And recently, just a couple of weeks ago, Tim Berners-Lee's foundation, the Web Foundation, published an Open Data Barometer, which measures over the whole world what the temperature is in open data. And the darker you see the shade of green there, the better these public administrations are making use of open data. And it's not only about the availability of open data, but it's also about how this is used and for what use it's being made available. And great examples are kind of innovative APIs. In London, for example, which is the benchmark with a score of 100 on this Open Data Barometer, the UK government seen as a kind of global champion. They have open data incubators, starting up companies around open data, and so on and so forth. So Europe is pretty dark green on the whole. There's still some way to go. But all in all, if you take all open data portals together in Europe and in the world, currently we would have about a few 100,000 data sets on these open data portals. Not only is open data going to be a small fraction of all the data sets that are available, but my challenging hypothesis here is that increasingly the value of data will reside in privately held data. I have I will try, and I hope this will work, a small demonstration of this. Bear with me if it doesn't. So this is an experiment from a US university called the Haystack. And it shows you on online platforms what data is being exchanged with different, between different applications. So this works on Android phones, if you have an Android phone. And you can look for applications. I'm going to check for the BBC News. Oh, this is not what I wanted. I'm sorry. This is the BBC News application. So if you have the BBC News app on your Android phone, then and you surf, then some information about you and your surfing habits will be passed on to this other company, which I'm sure you've all heard about, Scorecard Research. So we don't exactly know what company it is, but this is the BBC News app is exchanging some data about your surfing habits with this other thing. Now let's try something else. Maybe some of you read books, Amazon Kindle. So if you have a Kindle device on Kindle reader on your Android phone, then this device, you reading a book, is exchanging data with Amazon and the Amazon ad system. And as you accept the terms and conditions, you agree normally that you will be doing this. Some people in the room may be using Twitter. So to tweet about this, let me just see Twitter. Twitter is exchanging data with all of these services. And maybe some of you are using Facebook.
Ah, that might be the champion. Wow.
Facebook exchanges data while you're serving with all these services. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the amount of data and the value of data that is held in private data sets is increasingly outstripping by orders of magnitude the amount of information and value of information that is held in open data sets. This is the characteristic of platforms, and that the Commission looked at in an in-depth study earlier on this year. Platforms facilitate and extract value from interactions and transactions. They collect, use, and process large amounts of data and to optimize the experience. They create and shape new markets, and they have the capacity to create networks and new interdependencies. So there are some open questions that the Commission is now looking at, and the question is, how should data access to these privately held data sets be regulated? What are the issues around portability of data and interoperability of data? And I'll come back to that in a second. And there's a question around data ownership. I see Mario at the back of the room here. So the net neutrality was the second assignment to combine, and we've heard some really inspiring talks about common carrier obligations and equality of access. And of course the Commission has taken this very seriously in the past and has regulated on net neutrality, which was complemented recently by various guidelines. And net neutrality is what we believe is what keeps the internet open, and there can be no discrimination between different packets of information, and everything must be treated equally by network operators. This is something that was a thing. But what I want to challenge you with, in the same way that I think that open data is a basis and an important administrative tool to spur transparency and innovation, but it's being superseded by privately held data, I want to challenge you with the following thought, that net neutrality is also being superseded by, in a certain degree, by platform neutrality. And what do I mean by that? Platform neutrality means that actually platforms that we use, like for example on your mobile phone or on your desktop or on your social media, they must remain open in the same way that we think of the network of remaining open. So effective interoperability is important, so that equipment can communicate seamlessly with each other regardless of what the manufacturer, operating system or other technical components are. This is the position of the Commission in the ICT standardization priority communication that was issued also earlier as part of the digital single market strategy. But that doesn't actually, that is not enough for platform neutrality. And of course some of you, or most of you perhaps, are even probably computer scientists or coders, professional coders, and of course the term platform neutrality comes from, if we think something is platform neutral, that means it will work on any operating system, it will work on any platform, and so on. So we want to extend this concept now to also online platforms. And fair relationships is another one. We carried out a public consultation, and many platform users of the big platforms such as Amazon or Facebook consider that business-to-business relations are still not fair enough. So we've also heard this with the professors earlier. Fairness in relationships is a very important concept for neutrality. And this brings me to another topic which the Commission will be looking at together with the Parliament next year. And since this is a joint event, I thought I'll mention it here. The fairness of algorithms is a topic for which the Commission has been asked by the Parliament to conduct an investigation in the form of a pilot project, and it will be done by my team. We've just come back from the big conference in New York on fairness, accountability, and transparency in machine learning. And of course, you've all seen in the news that fairness of algorithms and algorithmic biases and transparency are ever-increasing topics. So I did not talk about net neutrality, but I wanted to extend the concept into platform neutrality, and I'll be very brief now because we're nearly out of time. Digital government. Open digital government is something that's already coming and it's already happening. And we have got great examples around the world. Estonia, and with the Welcome to Estonia program, which is a very all-encompassing and very comprehensive, holistic leadership, and the whole world looks upon Estonia with great envy. But also in bigger member states such as France, we have the ETA Lab, and in the UK, the Government Digital Services. And one of the things that has been copied by the Americans from Europe is actually the US digital service called 18F, which is a true copy by their own admission of a European digital service, where they are now making public service delivery digital, and they're transforming digital service delivery by using the models that have been pioneered by the Europeans here. And I just wanted to say that we often say that all of the things that we do in Europe are copied from Americans, but actually when it comes to government digital services, it's the other way around. And some of you may have seen how the Americans are upset recently that they did not get invited to the Leaders Club of Digital Governments. This is part also an area that we're supporting in the e-government action plan, which was also announced earlier this year in April, where we have 3 pillars for the e-government action plan for digital public services for the future: digitize and enable. We modernize public administrations, make them simpler, connect the administrations amongst each other, but also for cross-border mobility, and engage to help a public administration to become more participative and participatory by designing and co-designing new services as the 3rd pillar here. There are lots of actions, and I invite you to. So I'm going to skip 2 slides. Maybe just one thing that I'm going to say is that the Commission itself has made some proposals about how to use data and big data and algorithmic inference on better monitoring. This is an example on bees, bee health monitoring. Here's something from the colleagues in the financial stability who are using very advanced concepts around blockchain and for safeguarding transactions in the financial stability regulation framework. But I want to end with this slide here. Not because of me, but I want to end with this slide because one of the things that I think is particularly promising for the Commission, but also for the digital public administration, is not only better service delivery, not only participation of citizens, which are very important, but they're coming and they have been demonstrated, and it's only a matter of scaling them up to realize. But it's also interfacing with the digital economy. And a great example, which I think is kind of world-leading as well, is from Estonia again, where the Estonian government is capable of actually taking real-time direct tax contributions from Uber rides by actually simply making available an API to the Uber app, which connects the tax authority in real time to every Uber taxi ride, and they can take tax at source when you are taking an Uber taxi in Tallinn. Of course, there are not so many Uber taxis in Tallinn at the moment, but this is not the point. This is not the point. The point is that this is actually possible, and this is possible in real time in a proportionate way, and I think this is the future for digital public administration.
It would be interesting to link to the previous presentations from my user point of view as an Estonian, and that's why I'm very grateful that you face it in. So I thought this is maybe a good linkage between what we just heard from a more, let's say, a theoretical academic point of view, and then me as an Estonian who has actually lived it, who still lives it, although I'm here, mostly here in Brussels, of course. But I wanted to maybe give few learning points from the Estonian e-government experience. So let me check with you, because I'm sure here in the audience we have many people who have in one or another way heard about the e-government practices in Estonia. So maybe you just throw a few words on me. For you, what is this e-government about? Have you heard any applications, anything that is used?
EID.
EIT, yeah.
ID.
ID, indeed. I will try to write up. Let's see if it works. So the ID card, basically. ID card, and it has a chip in it, so you can use the ID more or less for all kinds of services. Any other things you have heard about it?
E-residency.
E-residency, indeed, that's a new thing. So if you want to have an additional residency, or some of the Brits in the audience here, you may want to look at it. So there is an opportunity now to become e-resident in Estonia. So it's e-residency. And you can use the services of the public sector in Estonia. So what else you have heard?
Round the back.
Yes, just shout at me.
E-voting.
E-voting. Exactly, e-voting. E-voting. Yes, shout at me because I'm blinded by the light here. Tax declarations. Anybody else has heard something?
X-road.
Tax declarations. Yes, X-road is the right thing because this is an underneath lying technology. X-road. Anything else?
Integration with the statistical sources.
Yep, very good. So let me just give you maybe a bit more about the user experience, and then what are maybe the 3 learning points I thought would be interesting to share. As an Estonian, indeed, while I'm here in Brussels, I can do my votes. I can participate in the national elections through my with my ID card, basically. You have a card reader, you plug it onto your laptop at home, and here we go, you do it. I can use my ID card for all kinds of other services the public sector is providing. And I think one important point for me is that it just makes it so much easier. It really saves my time in using public services. So the point that people very much appreciate is not so much about transparency. Well, transparency is also important, but what people really appreciate is it saves you tons of time. It is just so easy. It's easy to pay your taxes. Everything is pre-filled. So if I open my tax declaration, basically the salary normally would be there, but okay, we are the functionaries here in Brussels, but if I would work in my home country, my salary and the taxes would already be there, so I only have to check if it's correct. Some of the deductions which are allowed for mortgages are already in there because the banks are all linked. So the banks, your mortgage loans are there, and what you can deduct is already there. Most of the training companies are linked, so that if you have some rights to, for example, take tax deductions because of your studies in university, this is already in your declaration. What else you have there? So more or less everything that you need for the declaration is there. You have to check if that is correct. You sign it, you send it off, and you sign it, of course, electronically. You don't sign it any longer on paper. So it literally takes me just a few minutes to check the numbers. Now, people enjoy it. I mean, this is easy, and this is something why also people support a lot the e-government, because many of the services have become easy to use. But this, of course, means underneath the various databases are linked. And me as a user, I only once give my data. I don't have to give the same data again yet to another database. It's all linked. If I want to see who is owner of what business, or who owns what land register, business register, these are publicly available information. So these databases are linked and available to check. But again, from the user's point of view, parents, for example, appreciate a lot that there is an e-school application. So the parents can actually see what homework the teachers have given to the kids, and they can also see the progress. And normally the e-school is one of the applications which is very widely used and very much appreciated. or the e-prescriptions. You go to the doctor, they prescribe some whatever medicine to you. You can go to any pharmacy in the country, and the only thing you have to show is your ID card, and the pharmacy knows what they have to give you. So these type of applications just make your life easy. You don't have to carry papers around, and it's all interlinked. So for me, the ease of use of the services is one of the big pluses. And what is important there, which people don't often know, is that the governmental services are combined with private sector providers. So for example, for the tax office, you only declare your taxes normally once a year. You know, maybe you pay the land tax in the meantime, but it's 2-3 times a year, not more. And if you would only access the tax department, you would forget in the meantime your access codes and so on. But you do it through your bank, for example, in my case, I do it through my bank account. So the private banks are also as kind of access providers. They are your gate towards the public services. And this makes it very easy because I have my PIN code, a little piece of equipment. It's very, very easy and makes it easy to use. Also the utilities, such as, for example, paying for your electricity. It's all linked in the same database, so I can easily pay my utilities as well. And the utility providers are also going now more and more towards so-called e-meters. So, for example, electricity is automatically already registered wherever your home is. So you don't have to go and look at the meters any longer. So the electricity provider already knows it anyhow. It's all automated and makes life again easy. So once only, and the ease of access through your private, like banks, for example, these are the 2 points. And the third one I want to make about Estonia is what Pravat already started to get into. The new, I would say, digitized services, which come because of these databases available, because they are talking to each other. And I think the mentality of trying to make something more out of it is very much that. You mentioned Uber, but the reason why there are not so many Uber taxis in Tallinn is that actually there is another Estonian company called Taxify, which apparently is even better to use than Uber, and apparently is even more client-friendly, and which also pays this, the taxi ride means that the data is automatically transferred to the tax office. The taxes are paid and counted and everything is fine, and apparently the customer interface is even better. So Taxify is apparently better than Uber. But similarly, now the tax office is thinking what else can they offer. And they have now come up with the new ideology that tax office is there to really provide more or less kind of an accounting service. So they are now offering for small businesses, but that small businesses no longer need to do their own accounting if they want to. It will be the obligation of the tax office to make sure that the taxes are properly paid. So you see that the logic will be completely and turned around. So the tax office is no longer there, the bad guys checking whether you have actually maybe hidden some money somewhere. They will be providing service, helping the small businesses to make their tax accounting properly and make sure that the payments are done on time. So these are my 3 points about this thing. But now I come with my joint research center hat, where I work as the Deputy Director General. And from the European Commission Joint Research Center, I also want to share with you, I would say, 3 lessons. The first one is perhaps a bit more traditional. Since we are the Commission Science Service, we do also science in the area of data science, data analytics, data mining, text mining. And today also here we have downstairs a few colleagues presenting some of our work. For example, I know somebody was presenting our visualization tools, our analysis for using road congestion data, using actually TomTom data for that. We also have a very interesting new, not so new, but a very interesting application for scraping intranet, so the European media monitoring system. And I'm going to have, I think, 1 slide on it. And finally, one colleague was presenting nowcasting. But the 3 types of services we provide to the Commission, or the 3 points I want to present to you. First one is around science itself, the science and the data we can provide for policy making. And the second point is around knowledge management, which our moderator has already alluded to. We have such huge amounts of data. How can we make something out of it? How can we understand the data? What is really the information or the wisdom we can draw from data? And my third point is about collaborative working. So let me just jump on actually some following slides. Let's go through this one, next one, and it's the next one. Here, yes. So trying to visualize a bit what happens within JRC, how can we support the EU policies. And one of the important changes we are introducing within our own organization, which used to be rather traditional, I would say almost like a scientific institute with different campuses and a lot of scientific exploration research going on. We realized that this is not enough nowadays, as the data is really flooding us, and we need to make some efforts to turn it into something that people in the policy side could use better. So what we try to do is really this sense making. We take a lot of global knowledge, not only the knowledge within our own scientific production units, so to say, not only within our own scientific directorates, but also elsewhere, wherever. We have created indeed dedicated teams which have the task of taking the knowledge and trying to make some sense out of it. So if you look today at our organizational structure, what you will find is that we have, I would say, vertical directorates with units in there, which are the, let's say, the scientific directorates dealing with various types of research issues. And then we have horizontally another layer, which is the knowledge management layer. And actually in our organigram you will find them, they are pink, but today I make them green. So we have these so-called pink panthers, or panthers, who are adding this kind of a matrix structure to the normal scientific directorates. But the importance here is that these people, they have the task to take the knowledge created within our organization and systematize it, synthesize it, and link between the various thematic fields. So the energy should talk to food production should talk to climate.